Okay, I'll make a motion to open the Village of Pittsford meeting for the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals. How do you vote?
Aye.
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 We'll start with conflict of interest disclosure, and I'm going to recuse myself from 75 Monroe and 42 West Jefferson. Does anyone else have any conflicts of interest to disclose?
No.
I do not.
I do not. I do not.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and let's start with 42 Monroe Avenue. That's the first one I have listed on my agenda here. And then we'll get to 6 Elm Street. Okay. And these are the applicants?
Yes.
Okay, so you're the property owners? Okay, well,
Correct.
thank you, and thank you for coming in. Let me just give a brief introduction here. So you're in here for site plan review, and I know some drawings have been going around a little bit back and forth, but what we're ultimately here to do is take a look at your property. In particular, we'd like to start with having a little presentation of what you're proposing. And what we're most interested in is how this might impact adjacent properties. So we're not really here to critique the design of your project. We're mostly trying to understand its impacts. So that's what our ears are tuned for. I just wanted to let you know that. I understand it's going to go for the Architectural Review Board, and they're going to take a look at the architectural design, the materials, and things like that. So after it comes through us, you'll have to go before them, assuming you get an approval tonight. So that said, let's go ahead and have you give a brief introduction to your project, and we'll go from there.
This will be a large property. Company. This is the existing outfit. We're proposing to put a 12 by 12 to the out to the east, which would be a sunroom with some steps coming down because there's a great difference between the first floor and ground. And then we're expanding this part of the house to the east, 2 floors. There'll be a new kitchen, there'll be a new bathroom and bedroom.
Is that this?
The larger version of this.
Relates to this page?
Probably. Looks like it.
Okay.
And there's a pool in the backyard, and that's not changing, like I
So
said.
nothing is changing. All the grades are pretty much the same. Even when we excavate, we're just going to probably take the earth out and either redistribute it around the plot or just take it out.
Okay. So let me see if I have my notes here. Over. So when your application states a lot of useful information in here. So it states your light fixture is going to be dark sky compliant, and you're using a bulb that's not particularly bright.
Yep.
And where are your light fixtures going to be located approximately?
There's one outside the door here, going down to the yard, and there's going to be one here halfway between the basement and the first floor, because that's where the grade is. So
Okay, so that's only 2 light fixtures.
that's all.
Okay. And Steve, they all comply with code, correct? Sure. Okay. Likewise, drainage, you're approximately 60 feet from the property line, so that's quite a distance. Steve, did you take a look at some of their drainage plans, and did you have any concerns?
No, not at all. They're plenty far away from any other residents.
Okay. And you made some notes on here about the landscaping. You're basically making we don't normally look much at residential landscaping. So you're going to do your construction, you're repairing the lawn, you're putting some shrubs around the perimeter. I think the only thing that we sometimes ask is if there's a air conditioner or something like that in view, they can plant a shrub in front of it or something like that.
I think there is one over here.
So that's about all I can think of. So I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, hardly visible.
I have a question about the total square feet. So if you add 276 square feet for the 2-story, equaling 552, plus the,
By 12.
yeah, it comes out to 600 and, I did the math here. It's not 828, so I was just wondering if there was something missing, or,
Well, there were steps, though, so.
oh, you're counting the steps?
Right.
Okay. So the steps would be
Off of the,
off the sunroom, okay.
Any other questions? Anybody?
No.
No,
Okay.
you
I mean,
made our plans.
yeah, so what's your description of everything on there? It seems to hit the key things for me. Now, where's a copy of our resolution? Is this it? I had a copy of our last one, of our findings. I'm just trying to figure out where I put those.
I steal them?
No, I don't know what my folders here. Unfortunately, I get
Listen, I printed one out before I left the office. Do you want mine?
so,
Well, you sent me this,
no, I'm talking about, I had a printout. Oh, here it is. I was taking a look at one of our prior approvals from one of the neighbors. And I just wanted to glance through that, and we can basically copy the findings that are similar, is what I was thinking. Is everyone all right with that in general? Yeah, this one was from 24 Monroe Avenue. Was that yours?
I don't think so.
No. It's not the porch. I don't know. It's an addition, residential addition. We had a few of them, applications last year on Monroe Avenue for different things.
This is the one behind the garage.
Okay.
I think that's the site plan behind the garage on the left of the resident who's got the pool behind the house.
Well, that's us too.
Yeah, that's you.
That's it.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay,
Yeah.
so it is.
Change of plans,
Which one, did they say?
but not 24. We're not 24.
There
we're
was someone
32.
else on the same side
All right,
that lived in.
yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm just going to read these as notes, and we can, what things that we can amend or not.
Do we have to open a public hearing?
Oh, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
forget about those things sometimes. All right, let's go ahead and make a motion to open the public hearing then.
I'll second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Okay. Is anyone in the audience looking to speak regarding this application? Okay. Now, we also have live streaming going on. Is there anyone online? I believe if anyone is online and would like to speak, you can click the raise hand button.
Nobody is raising their hand. I did not have any emails sent to me in regards to this. So,
Okay.
If I may, I just have one question. With regards to the proposal behind the garage, is that off? That's off.
This is replacing that.
Okay. Steve, is there any lot coverage concerns?
No.
I figured as much. Yeah, it's very big.
It's a very large lot.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a big house, but we've
Yeah.
said this before, a big house on a large lot is, didn't have any objections to that last
Yep.
time we saw one.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any vote?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through and glance at some of our old findings. I think it's probably the fastest to get through this. So first of all, Steve, this does not create any zoning violations, correct? Okay. Last time on compliance with the comprehensive plan and LWRP, we said it wasn't applicable. It's a residential addition in a residential district. That was a note we had. Any revisions to that?
No.
Okay. The adequacy and arrangement of traffic. Last time we said that was not applicable. Nothing is changing.
Do you want to wink at the LWRP, part of item 1?
The LWRP is, well, it's not applicable because this is a type 2 action in seeker.
Right, okay.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll amend it to say it's, the LWRP is not applicable because it's type 2 in seeker. So the arrangement of bicycle access and circulation is not applicable. Compatibility of proposed uses to adjacent uses. The adjacent uses are all residential, and this is residential. Adequacy of off-street parking, not applicable. Adequacy of landscaping and screening provisions. So it's already landscaped, and they're repairing the landscaping.
Do we want to make mention of screening for an air conditioning unit? Or was that just?
That's already handled, right? That's not an issue?
That's in the plan.
Okay. So we'll note that the applicant has agreed to plant a shrub or other appropriate screening in front of an air conditioner. Okay, and we don't care what it is. At least I don't care what it is. I can't speak for everybody else. Rose bush, whatever you want to do.
A little tall.
The HPB, I don't know if they look at that or not. You'll have to deal with them. Okay, so the next thing is location, arrangement, size, and design of signage is not applicable. Outdoor lighting. We said the lighting will comply with code. And so that's really, I don't think there's much more we need to do at this point. It's shielded, and lighting is shielded and compliant with code. So that's fine by me. The next thing is water and sanitary sewer systems is not applicable because they aren't changing. Drainage, again, the building inspector cited no concerns about drainage, and it's over 60 feet from the property line.
Be all conveyed on site.
What was that?
They will be all conveyed on site.
So all the stormwater will stay on site. Correct. Waste and trash management is not applicable. Snow removal plans, again, I don't think that's applicable. And whether the proposal will affect health, safety, and general welfare. We'll be right up about that before. Don't see anything in here, but I have no concerns. Does anyone else have any concerns? Okay. And fire marshal, did you have any concerns?
None.
Okay, fire marshal has no concerns. Okay. So that's our punch list. Now, in this draft resolution, we had something that is a condition of approval we sometimes, or we have often used in the past on light color, which is that the color of light has to be standard warm light bulbs, which is what you have in your application, just 2700 Kelvin to 3000 Kelvin. That's what you're in there. We're just looking for nothing crazy, just traditional incandescent light bulb color. Do you have a problem if we leave that in as a condition of approval? Okay. That's something we've had in there before. Other conditions of approval, and if you want to take a look at a copy of this, you're welcome to do so, by the way, is the Historic Preservation Board has to approve it, and the site plan approval will expire if you don't get a building permit in 1 year. And I know myself, I have a hard time getting contractors. That happens if it does expire, unless circumstances have changed, we can reapprove it. You just have to ask for that. So, and that's come up a few times before, but so that's not a drop dead date. It can be fixed. Any other comments from the board? Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion of approval.
I have no comment. I'll second.
Aye.
Okay, aye.
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 Okay.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
If you want a copy of this draft one, you are welcome to look at it. All we're going to do is fill in the blanks and get you a final decision.
The site plan date is being amended to June 13th.
Yes, so let's just state that the date of the plans will be on the resolution will be June 13th.
I missed this part. Unless Justin or
That's right.
yeah, do I have to circle something or do something like that?
Nope,
So just leave it as is?
leave it as is.
Okay,
This one. Right.
thank you.
Oh. That's good.
That was good. I was hoping to get through some of these fairly quickly. Okay, I'm trying. Next one is 6 Elm Street. The application is to construct a wider driveway. So I'll give you a little introduction here again. So we have different criteria for area variances. So ultimately you're here because you are requesting a 15-foot wide driveway, and code permits a maximum width of 10 feet in front of a single car garage. Is that correct, Steve?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So to construct your proposed 15-foot driveway, we are authorized to grant an area variance, which provides relief from the code to do what you want to do, if approved. And there are 5 criteria we have to consider with this. And ultimately, what we're looking at is how it benefits you and how it impacts the community and your neighbors. That's ultimately the key question for us. Well, some of the things we're looking at is whether there'll be an undesirable change in character of the neighborhood, whether there's another feasible means to solve your problem, whether the requested variance is substantial, whether there will be an adverse impact on the physical and environmental conditions, and whether the difficulty is self-created. So those are the 5 things we have to look at. You do not have to comply with all 5. Okay, so if we raise an issue with one, that doesn't necessarily send us in one direction or another. I just want you to know that. One thing that we do have to pay some attention to is we have to look at the minimum reasonable project to give you the relief you need. So we can only grant the smallest variance. So things like, and there could be a little wiggle room in there. So if you address us, we would appreciate understanding, hey, what is the nature of the issues you're having? What led you to get to this design? And what you're doing to make sure it doesn't impact other properties. So with that said, if you're welcome to go ahead and present what you have to us. I just wanted to make sure you knew what we're listening for, so you can be prepared to address all that.
I would like to make one adjustment by 1 foot. So the purpose, why I'm going ahead with this project is because the current driveway right now is crumbling, and it's in dramatic need of repair. The other thing with that being said is that between me and my wife, only having 2 vehicles, it's a 1-car driveway, we're constantly having to use up parking on the street right there on Elm Street, which is an undue problem to other residents who live on the street, where I could be parking in my own driveway, freeing up the space for another resident or someone else in the community to use. The other thing is, the purpose for that is actually wanting 16 feet, because that will give me, allow 2 vehicles side by side in my driveway. Now, from the current driveway width right now, it's actually skinnier than the shoulder of the driveway at the end of the driveway. And for whatever reason, when the new driveway was originally put in, it was only put in the exact width of the garage door, not the actual width of the garage itself. So in my plans, I think might be a picture in there. There is about a 3-foot space from the right-hand side of the garage door, if you're looking at it, to where the actual garage ends. So all I'm doing is looking to have that go that full width of the garage, so where I would actually only be expanding it from the width of the garage itself would be about 3.5 feet, which would go into the left-hand side of the yard. But if I was at the end of the driveway looking down, it would be the full width of what the shoulder is currently right now.
Okay. Is there any changes to the curb cut that you're proposing?
No.
Okay, so the ramp, I was going to say, I think that has to go to the trustees if they're going to change that. Is that right, Steve? Or is that unclear?
What do you mean?
The curb cut, in the village right away, the end of the driveway.
I mean, I don't know what the trustees do, but I do know this existing curb cut is there. You know,
Okay.
for wider width already on the driveway.
Okay, so whatever the on-ramp is, you can go from there, widen your driveway in some pattern that works for you to park 2 cars side by side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot wider and it shrinks in to just the narrow width of the garage door. But like I said, I have, 3 feet on the right side of the garage door, because there's a door there. Essentially, just walking into my garage door, it's grass and some stonework that I've done there. But ideally, I'd like to walk into my garage door from an actual driveway.
Okay.
And from a standpoint from like shrubs and everything, there would be a slight adjustment. I do have some shrubs that I have on the left side that I obviously might have to need to replace some of those rose bushes and flowers. And anyone who's seen my house on the corner, I take great pride in what it looks like. So anything that you would recommend that be done from a visual standpoint, I would be more than happy to do.
So ultimately, what's before us is giving you permission to make the wider driveway. I don't believe it triggers a site plan review, and it does require a driveway permit from Steve. And so if that goes that way, Steve is gonna wanna look at drainage and whether it complies with code and stuff like that. Usually with driveways, the primary concern is that you're accommodating stormwater and you're not dumping it on your neighbor's property.
Yeah, most of.
So if it's going in your yard and if the water's going in your yard and staying in your yard, that's acceptable. If it causes you drainage problems, that's not impacting the neighbors.
There is a drain that I would be having to go around it from the actual roof line, but that itself drains through some leach field in the ground. It doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't actually go to the sewer. It's old cast iron pipe that goes in the ground. I have no idea where that goes, but.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, I'm just seeing this as between you and the building inspector. When you apply for your driveway permit, you can go over all the drainage stuff.
Okay.
What we're looking at is whether it can be 15 foot wide, I believe. Does that
16.
sound, 16 feet, correct. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, now the driveway itself is, I don't have the drawing in front of me, and my recollection is your driveway is about 37 feet long from the sidewalk to the garage.
It sounds right, it's not that long.
32 and 32.28. Oh, wait.
So it's 32 to the house,
Yeah.
plus another, what, 5?
4.
4? 36, 37, okay.
Yeah, if I had 2 cars back to back and they're bumper to bumper, I just barely fit in from not overhanging over the sidewalk.
Yes, I took a look at some of our parking code to see what the minimum size of a parking spot is in our parking code, and it says 8 feet by 20 feet for parallel parking. So your driveway just cannot currently hold 2 legal parking spots per, what we have called out in our village code, which
Yeah,
is meant to work with a variety of vehicles. So it's neither wide enough nor long enough. So so for me at least, when I'm listening to this, I think it's totally reasonable to want to fit 2 cars in your driveway. That's kind of a fact of life. And due to the front setback of the garage and the house, there's no way to accommodate that with a 10-foot wide driveway. So, so that makes sense to me. Any other thoughts?
So I just had a couple, so the first one, any lot coverage concerns?
Pardon?
Any lot coverage concerns?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Your primary goals are to fix, repair, and to park 2 cars?
yeah, so the goal would be to remove the damaged driveway, put a new foundation down, and then obviously, once that settles, come back, and then they would put the new asphalt on top, yeah.
Okay.
So it's so far damaged that there's no repair available at this point. It's heaved and it breaks apart, like there's chunks coming off the side of it right now, it's so old. I had it refinished like when I moved in 5 years ago, but there's only so much you can do with,
But the plan is for 2 cars, not 4 cars, for example?
Yes, correct.
2 cars. Parking on the street, is it marked? And how many spots are there along the street? Do you know, Steve?
I think there's only 4 or 5 on the inside, they're separated, they're not continual.
Yep.
They only have 4 or 5 spots on the street.
What's the general usage?
For me,
Not just generally on the street.
the people in the area on that street,
You're pretty typically full,
always,
always?
yeah.
And, go ahead.
I was going to say, parking in the winter on the street isn't allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
What do you do?
parking snowbank,
And try to pull it
park at
up.
my mother-in-law, sometimes I'll park behind the pickle factory, if I got 3 feet of snow,
Yeah.
and I gotta run to work, drop the kid off, I'm just gotta park right,
Yeah.
and it's been a long time coming, getting to this point, so
Okay.
it would be, from a quality of life standpoint, it would be a huge improvement.
Yeah. How many other homes on the street have 15 or 16-foot wide driveways?
Oh, no.
The 2 houses across the street do. The one on the corner across from me, I don't know what her number is, but, and then the White House to the left of that, she does too. Haggerty's don't. I think most of the 2-car driveways are on the west side. Most of the ones that are on my side are single, but they're a whole lot longer. But the ones on the opposite side, most of them are all 2 or 3 wide.
Stephen, your estimation, if a additional garage was added down the road, because all 2-car garage homes can have a wider driveway going in, would that be a lot coverage issue?
Each case, you may have an issue, but, in this case, there isn't a coverage issue, but typically, many neighbors are over lot
Right.
coverage.
Yep. There's just something to consider thinking about. I had one other item. Anybody else? No. Was there any consideration, so Justin, your comment on minimal and reasonable, right? Was there any consideration for a L?
There was, but I thought doing an L would take away a lot of that little side yard that I have right there. Visually, I think it wouldn't look as nice, as just having it a little bit wider. Plus, because the driveway is not long, parking in there, you still wouldn't be able to swing a vehicle out.
It's too short to put like a turnaround type of parking, because you wouldn't be able to get out with the other car in.
Mhm.
Unless you put the turnaround right into the sidewalk, because I don't think you'd want.
Yep. Okay, I just wanted to ask the right questions, but really appreciate the feedback, that's all I have.
Anyone else have any questions?
I didn't.
Okay, so we had approved one previously on Elmbrook. This was years ago, I don't know if you remember that one, Susan. It was basically the same circumstance, a short driveway, they wanted a wider driveway. And anyway, so we can go through I guess we gotta open the public hearing.
Yes.
And, yeah, make sure you remind me if I forget about that. So, and then we'll go through our criteria and vote on this. So I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Seconded.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience looking to comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
I think it's been answered though. I wondered about any impact on that tree, the huge tree that's just right, I mean, exactly to the left of the driveway. Would that tree remain? It sounds like from what Justin said that it would remain, but I'm wondering if there's room for the driveway and the tree as it is now.
Great question.
It's a real old tree, I know that.
Yes, I actually, two things about that tree, just because you brought it up. It would not impact that tree. That tree is probably, I'd have to say, a good 6-7 feet from where that driveway will end on the left-hand side. However, I did just have I don't know what to call it, tree surgeon come by because some of that tree is dying and it might be a little diseased, so they said they come in, they can cut it and make sure there's no more damage to that. But yeah, there wouldn't
That
be
tree is
anything on that
actually the
tree.
village's tree. You know, it's between the sidewalk and the street, which makes it village property, right?
Well, he isn't proposing changing anything between the sidewalk and the street, was what I heard.
Yes, I realize that now.
Yeah, there's just some dead branches that,
Okay.
and last winter we had a storm, some of them came down in the yard. I'm just worried that my kids playing there, my wife, one of them might break. So, but I know it's the village's tree, but
Yeah,
it's a safety issue at this point. If the village wanted to come by and take care of that, that would sure save me some money.
If it's on the village property, they will.
Yeah, that would be great.
Talk to that guy.
Can you ask her name?
But yeah, it provides a lot of shade in my yard. I like that tree.
Yeah, can we get your name and address, please?
pardon me?
Can we get your name and address for the record?
I'm a steel loader and I'm at 5 Elm Street, right across the street from Justin.
Okay, and you have a wider driveway, is that correct?
I have really a T-shaped driveway. It isn't very wide as you're entering, but then it goes in front of the garage, which makes it, you know, the base of the T, the top of the T is from the street to the end of the property, actually.
Okay,
If that describes it well enough. So the driveway is narrow, but it's two cars wide in front of my garage.
okay, thank you. Are there any other people looking to comment?
Nobody online?
Okay. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing then.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, so let's go through the criteria for the area variance. I did not bring a copy of any of the other driveway variances we looked at recently. I know we just looked at one like a meeting or two ago, but this one is different circumstances. So the first criteria is whether this will create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties. Any thoughts on that from anybody?
No.
No thoughts or no?
Both.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't, he still has a side yard, drainage isn't gonna be a problem. And we know there's houses with wider, short driveways that are all over the village. They're not uncommon. So I don't see any undesirable change in neighborhood character or adverse impact to other properties.
Just keep a car off the street where it's.
Right.
Yes, and it might open up on-street parking. Okay, next question, whether the benefits can or cannot be achieved by another feasible method.
Hard to imagine.
That was my question on the L, and it seems to be too short for that to be easily accommodated
Yeah,
without getting reasonably close to doing more than what you're already doing.
yeah, I would agree. And as far as the width of this goes, 16 feet, I think is pretty close to about the minimum that could possibly accommodate two cars side by side without them being staggered and still open doors. So I would agree. I don't think it can be achieved by some other feasible method. And again, a big portion of that is the front setback of the house and the garage, because the driveway is short. That's what really is the obstacle. Okay, the next one, whether the requested variance is substantial. I think usually when we've looked at this, we've looked at a numbers game, and so 16 feet is considerably larger than the 10-foot requirement. So I think we should say it is substantial, but that alone does not necessarily prevent us from granting this.
Agreed.
See? Okay. So the next matter, whether the proposed variance, whether that will adversely impact the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. We usually just copy what we answered for A for that. So I would say it will not, and see our prior comments for A. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And the last one is whether the difficulty is self-created. And I would say, yes, the desire for a driveway is self-created, but we usually say this alone doesn't preclude granting a variance. Any other thoughts?
No.
No.
And finally, for the reasons discussed, I think it is the minimum necessary to provide relief, because anything smaller than 16 feet will not be functional for two cars. And 16 feet is kind of the minimum, 8 feet is the minimum parking spot width in our code for a parking spot. And for the last one, physical characteristics of the property. The big one is the front setback of the garage and house allows for only a short driveway that is not long enough to hold two typical size cars.
Right, so another configuration.
If it was a longer driveway and the garage was further from the street, we'd be having a different discussion.
Right.
Any other comments anybody has? Any other findings they want to make?
The only comment I would offer, Justin, is that the applicant amended the application during the hearing to change the request from a 15-foot wide driveway to a 16-foot wide driveway, and that's what's being considered.
Okay, so noted. I would also add an additional note that the building inspector will work on drainage issues as part of their driveway permit. So that'll be reviewed. All right, I will make a motion to approve this for the reasons stated. And I'm also going to say I don't see a need for any conditions of approval.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, any thoughts? All right. So how do you vote? I'll vote aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, congratulations, you're all set from us. So your next stop is to talk to Steve to get your driveway permit.
And work on the tree.
Thank you for coming.
Right. Okay, with that, I will be heading out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm trying to get through these somewhat quickly.
You did great.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Not yet. We got 42 Jefferson, West Jefferson. All right, so moving on, just a quick note, in lieu of Justin's recusal, I've stepped in to chair this section of the application process for 42 West Jefferson Road. This is the Buffalo Bills using the Sutherland parking lot to transport guests from the school to St. John Fisher for the duration of the Bills training camp. With that being said, I'd like to open it up to Steve, if it's okay, to hear about the application.
The application, and that letter right there is an authorization from the attorney for Buffalo Bills for me to represent them tonight.
So noted. Would I give this to Kristen to put into record? How does that work?
I've never seen a building inspector represent an applicant before.
Well, the clerk does it, I was told that because the village clerk will represent the application, if they're not here for things that I would be authorized. I believe Alex is on, if you would deem that not,
He is on.
well, it's right to you, but I know that the village clerk does stand in for applicants.
Is there a written authorization for you to represent them?
Yeah,
Is it in the packet?
no, I just received it.
Oh, okay, got it.
Can we have Alex just verbally authorize it as well as sufficient? Or was that good?
Well, the property owner or the tenant should be doing that.
Alex does have his hand raised.
Okay.
Alex?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Good?
Yes, so as far as authorizing Steve to represent us, on behalf of the Buffalo Bills, as attorney for the Buffalo Bills in this matter, we authorize Steve to represent us in the capacity of the building inspector and basically representing us in connection with the temporary use permit for the use of the Sutherland High School parking lot for the 2022 NFL training camp of the Buffalo Bills.
The tenant specifically authorized him to proceed?
Sorry, what was that?
The tenant specifically authorized him to proceed.
The tenant provided a letter. Basically, the school district provided us with a letter. I believe Steve has a copy of it. I did submit it in connection with the application.
Okay.
So yes.
If
I'm
you'll,
sorry, that was the owner, but yes, the tenant did authorize the same.
right, you represent the tenant, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the owner and the tenant both have authorized.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And at this time, I'd like to defer to Steve to talk about the application.
The application is for shuttle service at Southern High School. A function has been carried on by the Buffalo Bills for many years due to COVID. They had to not utilize St. John Fisher and have the training camp at St. John Fisher. I read the code in the village code and authorized a temporary use permit based on the code saying in non-conformity with the zoning district and in the best interests of the village of Pittsford and its residents, that this would be a method for the Buffalo Bills to do what they've done for many years and to serve this village.
How, and over what period of time?
Pardon, it's from June or July 24th to August 11th.
And what are the hours of operation?
It's on the application, I'm not sure.
They're all different times. It is in the packet.
Are these times substantially different than in prior years, Steve?
Nothing's different than the prior years. Other than the fact that they have to go around the French Road now because of the bridge.
Because of the bridge, right. So this is an application for a temporary use permit. And by your understanding of code, we have the authorization to hear a temporary use permit in a single-family residential zone.
Yes,
And that this is as a result of this being for the greater good of the community per, I think it was section 3 of the code. Is that correct? Is there a specific reference to that code, just so we could have it on record?
Yeah, that would be nice.
I think he's referring to section 210, 39.1A.
Okay. Thank you. And as a result of that being in the greater good, we are going to look at this as a special use permit in a residential, temporary use, I'm sorry, in a residential zone. There are qualifications or necessary steps that we look at, and I'm just looking for my list of those that we have to go through in order to.
I have it right here.
Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for. So temporary permit considerations, this is 21039.4. The ZBA.
Are you going to open the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So let's open the public hearing. I'll make a motion to do so.
I'll second that. Aye. Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Motion carries.
great. Is there anything different in this application than in any prior year's application,
the code was changed.
other than the code being different?
No,
No.
as far as the functionality of what they're doing and how they're proceeding.
How many buses they intend to have, the frequency of travel?
Correct, they basically use the same application or information from previous years and just forward it, change the dates.
Do you know how many years it has been?
I've only been here 3.5, so I'm not quite sure.
So you were here for one prior, is that correct? You were here for one prior?
Yes, the first year.
The first one. Were there any complaints in that year that you're aware of?
No, none that came to my office or was forwarded to me.
And are you aware of any other complaints in prior years?
Not that I know of.
Would the, is it Alex? Would
Alex?
would he know how many years
Yeah.
this is?
I mean, I know it dates back to 10, because I've been going to this.
If we could take a quick break, I'll be able to access that information if I had the Wi-Fi code. So we'll just take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So motion to adjourn for 5 minutes? Okay. There's a motion to reopen the meeting that we didn't technically close. So motion to reopen?
You did close.
We did close it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're back.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. So the question that we were looking into was how long the Buffalo Bills have been using Sutherland and having training camp at St. John Fisher, and the answer
The
is
application letter states since 2000, they've been working with the village.
Since
And
2000.
Southern High School.
okay,
Alex responded and said since 1999.
great. Thank you. So what we're about to do is look at temporary use permit considerations, and the zoning board shall consider the zoning or planning? Zoning. Shall consider the general purpose and intent, taking into account the location and size of use, nature and intensity of operations involved, and conducted in connection with it, and the size of the site with respect to the streets giving access thereto. So that's the first thing, is this application in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the chapter, taking into account those things? I believe it is. This has certainly been a benefit to Pittsford, in my view, in having the traffic through the community, but also to facilitate the reach of the Buffalo Bills into the community. It's certainly something that's very desirable. And so we've appreciated this partnership we've had with them for so long. And I would suggest that this is in harmony and the intent. The school is quite large. They've accommodated very well in years past. We've had no complaints.
Right.
So to that end, I believe it is in harmony. So I'll move on to B, which is not tend to depreciate the value of adjacent property, taking into account the possibility of screening or other protective measures. There's nothing here that's permanent, right? The process is as it's always been. And I think there's no depreciation risk to adjacent property owners.
Right, and the neighborhood is used to a school bus.
Yeah.
So,
Very good point.
Yeah.
And also, this is during the time that the school buses aren't traveling through. Does it create a hazard to health, safety, or general welfare? My opinion, it does not.
I agree. Agreed.
I was just going to add that in the past, when you've considered the prior permits for this use, we've also considered things such as that the proposed use will use shuttle buses that were similar in nature and impact to normal activities occurring at the Sutherland High School, that the route driven by the shuttle buses was selected to minimize traffic on the residential streets. Has the route changed?
Yes. Yes.
Is that still the same?
It routes around to French Road, this is a bridge closure.
Okay.
It's minimally
It's barely going
in the
through
village.
Right. And it will, you previously found that this type of use would not introduce substantial adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhood, taking into account the temporary nature of the use.
Yep.
And that also there would be no depreciation on adjacent properties, again, taking into account the temporary nature of the use.
And this, if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at the July 15th, 2019 decision on temporary zoning permit?
Yes.
Yep. And those do continue on with regards to not altering essential character, nor be detrimental. It is a renewal of prior approval, and the event has been successfully executed in the past. Just to continue briefly here, E through H, does it introduce substantial adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood? No. Any disagreement? Not be detrimental to the flow of traffic, taking into account the duration and times of activity. I would simply say here, well, it may be detrimental to the flow of traffic in the short term. That road and the Sutherland is very used to bus traffic, and being that it is temporary and the duration and the times are in the middle of the day, just to note, 9:45 a.m. through 11:15. Operational hours of the busing is 8:45 to 12:15. These are all during what would normally be school hours, though it does include Saturdays and Sundays. Again, just referencing that it is a fairly short period of time. Only on Friday, August 5th, is it in the evening, ending at 8:30 p.m. Again, I think that's very reasonable. Does not adversely impact pedestrian safety. I would suggest it doesn't, though there is more traffic, so pedestrians will need to be aware. But there's no additional signage necessary on the streets, nor will we need additional traffic cops or anybody like that. And we've done this in the past.
And just kind of as a note, they have an attendant that will be on site during the whole use.
Great. Does not create a hazard to health, safety, or general welfare. That was the same as C, so no. Coming to the July 15th, 2019 resolution, just a couple things that were noted. I want to make sure I bring up again. The shuttle bus service may be operated in accordance with Buffalo Bills training camp, satellite parking, a copy of which is attached, etc. The building inspector shall determine reasonable setup and takedown times and may authorize in writing changes to the location or permitted dates and hours of operation. So that does grant you a degree of latitude. Is that a degree of latitude we'd like to extend here as well, given the successful implementation in prior years?
Yes.
Yes,
Did you open the public hearing on this?
not yet. Should we now?
Yes, you did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, I think it is.
You did.
Okay. Is
I
there
have
any,
these resolutions for this year, not these.
okay. Is there any public comment at this time?
No.
Okay. All signage for the event shall be removed at the conclusion of the event. The building inspector shall determine that signage is appropriate in quantity, size, and location. So to the extent that it's helpful to coordinate matters. Porta potties shall be regularly cleaned and maintained so they do not produce offensive odors. Could you just briefly identify the porta potty situation in the assembly area?
It should, I believe they would have provided a map with the application.
Is that consistent with prior years as well? Is there anything new in terms of the number or frequency of those? Sorry, I did not.
The only map was
They are
the,
emptied and cleaned daily, on a daily basis by a company hired by the board.
Okay,
okay.
so there's no map that I see with regards to a site plan type thing. Do you know where they were in the prior years?
To be honest with you, no.
Okay, I might like to then simply add that as we did with signage, that porta potties, the building inspector shall determine the appropriate quantity, size, and location. Is that a reasonable extension?
Yes.
Any objection?
No,
No?
sounds good.
All right, so Steve, that's on you.
Good with that.
Keep it clean, right? No smells.
Yep.
All right, that's on you. Okay. All trash shall be removed at the end of each day of operation. I'd also like to add here a line that the building inspector shall determine the quantity and location and size of all trash receptacles. Should you recognize a problem is occurring, rectify it appropriately.
Immediately.
Okay, thank you. Village code enforcement shall be allowed to conduct all necessary code inspections prior to, during, and during the event as necessary. The applicant will inform the village if they receive any complaints or requests regarding the event. I'd like to add to that the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'm okay with that. I'm good with that.
The Planning and Zoning Board reserves the right to revoke the temporary zoning permit in the event that it creates traffic hazards or unsafe conditions for pedestrians, or if there are health, safety, or welfare concerns that are communicated to the applicant and not resolved. If there is an emergency condition, the Planning and Zoning Board may revoke the permit and provide the applicant with a post-revocation hearing. If there is a non-emergency condition, Planning and Zoning Board shall provide the applicant with notice and an opportunity to be heard on the revocation. The Planning and Zoning Board shall have sole discretion to determine whether a condition constitutes an emergency. Is that a reasonable clause to include this year in the approval as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, okay, thank you. The applicant shall maintain a liability insurance policy of at least $1 million, naming the Village of Pittsburgh as certificate holders.
I have that.
You have that already, that's been issued?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other concerns, questions?
Not here.
Joan?
No.
Susan? Any other public comment?
No.
No? Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
Aye.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
All right, motion carries. Given the previous discussion and the conditions outlined previously, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as applied.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. It's my understanding the Monroe County Health department is next.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
thank you very much. Listen, I've got a new hearing aid then. Every time somebody opens a piece of paper.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a lot of it. Does anybody need a short recess before we move on to 75 Monroe?
No, I'm good.
I'm okay. Are you?
All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
So this resolution for this temporary use permit, what you just went through,
Yes.
is way longer than that. So what am I referring to?
Yeah. So let me do this for you. There it is. Just a minute. Okay. Yeah, it's on page 2. No, I'm sorry, it continues here on the back, and then just disregard anything that comes after that. And that's July, from July of 2019.
Okay, I referenced these earlier, so I
You
have
did.
this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, perfect.
If there's anything additional you need, just let us know. Or okay.
Yeah, well done.
Moving on.
Thank you.
All right. Gentlemen?
Here we go.
Yep. Dave, before we jump into that, do you want to do the resolution on the tolling agreement?
Yeah, that'd be great. Let me- All right. So the first order of business before we begin the amended site plan review for the project at 75 Monroe, we have a tolling agreement. I'm just going to read this briefly into the record, and then we'll proceed from there. So at the meeting of the planning board of the Village of Pittsburgh, duly convened on July 6th at 6:30 PM at Village Hall, the following resolution was offered by David Marshall, who moved its adoption, and seconded by board member, I don't have that right now, who did that?
Well, somebody will do it right now.
Oh, okay, so,
Or after you.
or did I just, oh, July 6th, today is July 6th. In my mind, I heard that as June 6th.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think Susan's seconding.
would you like to second the tolling agreement?
I would.
All right, Susan Loda, DeWitt. Whereas the Village of Pittsburgh Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals received and reviewed an application from the above-mentioned applicant for the above-mentioned action. And whereas the board has held a public hearing and received comment thereat. And whereas on June 7th, 2022, the board made a determination that the project was inconsistent with the LWRP, the inconsistency determination. And whereas the board received a request from Pittsburgh Canalside Properties to toll the statute of limitations to challenge the inconsistency determination. And whereas on June 28, 2022, Board Attorney Mindy L. Zoglin signed an agreement to toll the statute of limitations to challenge the inconsistency determination, a copy of which is attached here too. Now therefore be it resolved that the board does ratify and affirm the tolling agreement executed by Attorney Zoglin on June 28, 2022. And herein waive the balance of application.
Oh, no, that.
No.
Yeah, that comes out, sorry.
Yeah, that comes out. Yeah, that,
I don't know where that comes.
okay.
Can I have a copy of that, please?
Yes.
I'll slide this over as soon as I'm done. So the question was put to vote, and so we continue our all in favor.
Oh.
So we have a motion and a second.
And, aye?
All in favor? Aye. 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 All right. The tolling agreement has been ratified. Is this the copy that you would like for me to sign, or will there be an amended one to eliminate that one
You
line?
can just cross that off and initial it and sign that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And write in Susan Loda.
Yep. Thank you. Do we have the section that was signed by the applicant?
Yeah, we do, but that's just the one that I signed, that's all you need to ratify. But we do have a counter signed by everybody else.
Great, thank you. Any other motions that we need to address in advance?
No.
Okay, great. So just a real quick statement of where we are. We had the LWRP review. There was an inconsistency determination that's currently in a appeal process. I believe you submitted that to the HPB. We have, as we talked about last time, we have a site plan that was approved in 2014. Since 2014, the code, of course, has changed and been updated. So the site plan review, specifically the major site plan review, has additional elements to it that may not have been or maybe have been excluded to, right? So it could be additional items or some things removed from the 2014 that applied to the initial site plan application as approved at that time. This is an amended site plan, so we're looking back to that 2014, but because it's a new application, we can't go back and use the old major site plan review, right? We have to use the current site plan review. To that end, I just wanted to ask if Ms. Oglin, you might comment at all.
Yeah, you're entirely right. I mean, the initial 2014 site plan was granted. This is a modification of the 2014 site plan. Thailand has advised us that it's not substantially different from the approved site plan, but we do need to consider this application in light of the new code.
And so at a prior juncture, there was a request of TY Lin to start work on what would be considered phase two. Phase one was the LWRP consideration. Phase two is this work that they've done. It is not the engineering work. That would be phase three that they would start if we move forward through phase two. The engineering elements are things like sewage, electrics, utilities, other things that require additional effort on behalf of TY Lin. So today, what we wanted to do, if I may, is hear from TY Lin and hear of their report. If you guys had any initial comments that you wanted to express, that'd be great, keeping it relatively succinct to specifically the amended site plan review process. And then at that point, I believe Andrew Pliny, is that correct? Yep. I'd like to open it up to Andrew to hear from TY Lin directly as to the conclusions of their reports and sort of walk us through the things that are very important for us to take a look at, in addition to other matters.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't really, didn't know I was going to be speaking that much. I'm just familiar with this project. I basically did the site plan.
I'm going to come right to you in just a second. I just wanted to give the applicant just a couple minutes to talk. And Christian here said 3 minutes, so.
Well, now it's going to be 4 because I got to, help him out. I'll go through some of this.
Very good.
No, actually, it's a good point. And what Peter Bars from BME, who's here sitting next to me, along with Chris DeMarzo, president of Mark IV Enterprises. Thank you very much for having us this evening. As always, we appreciate it. And I think, Dave, you summarized where we are very well. We're here just for the amended site plan. The issue is substantial conformity, and I think TY Lin, in its yesterday's report, as well as its May report, addresses that substantial conformity. There's actually a very useful table that they compare, that TY Lin compares the originally approved site plan with today's site plan, the proposed amended site plan, and says, is the parking the same, increased, or reduced? Is the open space the same, increased, or reduced? And I would recommend that you take a look at that in making your decision. As you said, Dave, we had a 2013 preliminary site plan approval, a 2014 final site plan approval. I spent this afternoon looking at the differences between the code, the site plan code for the Village of Pittsburgh back then and now. There's virtually no difference. The language is almost identical. Here and there's a little tweak in the language. But we're fine under either code, very satisfied that we meet both site plan codes back then, and with our amendments, we meet the site plan code today, and I think that's what the T1 reports make clear. As you said, the T1 reports make clear that it's substantially the same, and I think that's the issue. My goal tonight is to now turn it over to Peter to address the issues raised and any issues raised in T. Wyland's report. There's some open questions that T. Wyland had that I think Peter can put your mind at ease on, and the gentleman from T. Wyland can chime in if he disagrees.
If I may, I might open it up to Andrew first before Peter comes in. Thank you.
Sure.
Trying to make it easier for Andrew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a long list here, but basically what Jim Burton did and what I helped do with reviewing the site plans, we went through the village code, Article 34, the major site plan review.
And if I may, this is 210-34.3.
Correct.
For major site plan review. And throughout that article or that section of the code, there is considerable items of which your report details each verbatim. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if one were to pull up the T. Wyland report, task 2, am I correct that this has not yet been posted online?
It has been posted.
It has been posted. This was received yesterday, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So just to note, the specific report that we're referencing that Mr. Collini is about to discuss was received by the planning and board just yesterday. And to that end, we will discuss as much as we reasonably can this evening, recognizing that all of us have not had substantial time for review. But it's important to us to move this forward, to have these conversations. And even though we have two tracks, the LWRP moving in this direction or simultaneously, right, as well the site plan moving simultaneously, these are two different tracks. So this discussion is specific to major site plan review. I suspect after this evening, we'll have a special meeting scheduled after potentially some receipt of some additional comments or material. So again, just going to this report was received yesterday, and one of the reasons why we appreciate your verbal comment to help us work through the things that we haven't been able to read through and fully understand quite yet.
Sure. I mean, I didn't specifically go through this. I mean, we answered every part of it, the code section.
Yep.
Right? But
so your task, if I'm just to reiterate, your task was to take major site plan review, look at every element that is required of us, and to offer comment.
Correct.
Yep.
We did basically a plan review for you. It labeled everything on here, where it's located in the drawings, what the outcome is, and if there may be something that needs to be done forthcoming. But like you said before, there was no substantial difference. There may be some things that are lacking that can be provided, maybe in task 3 or after, once this task 2 has been approved, maybe the application could be modified. For some things like snow removal, just as an example, the drawings don't indicate where snow storage would be, those types of things. Very minute, but I hope that type of stuff doesn't hold this part up.
And all of your references are with regards to the completed application that in phase 1 that you deemed complete.
Correct.
Correct. And that was in the meeting packet, I believe, for both June 1st and 7th, or maybe 6th and 7th. Right. So to the extent that any comments are referenced, that is publicly available on those meeting agendas. Okay, thank you. So if you could maybe just start with D1.
Okay. D1. It's gonna take a while if we're going through all of them, that's why I didn't want to know if that's how you wanted to tackle it.
We don't need to read through them. Maybe what I'll do here.
Maybe you could do the most significant.
Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll just highlight real quick D1 and then just move forward if there's no substantial comment this evening. Because the goal of tonight, okay, if there's any one goal that we have of tonight, it's to make sure we identify the primary tasks of the applicant that we might ask for them of additional information, possibly in writing, or additional amendments to the site plan, right? So in D1, it was just simply, is it a complete application? To your comment, the application was received November 12, 21, contained the signature, and you do offer one consideration here that should be given to provide a placeholder for a seal and signature of the project engineer. So I'm sure you guys will all do that.
We can deal with that.
D2 was this narrative of all proposed uses and structures, including but not limited to hours of operation, peak number of employees, maximum seat capacity, and proposed number of off-street vehicle and bicycle parking spaces. Andrew, if you could maybe comment a little bit on the restaurant, the special use permit, the cafe. What information do we have, and what do you suggest that we need for greater clarity?
Well, yeah, I mean, we really don't have, those haven't been nailed down as far as the restaurant formally doesn't exist, and now it's going to be a clubhouse with a cafe. So we haven't looked at those plans because they're not developed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I don't know that TY Lin knew that all those issues are addressed in the special permit issued by the village board, the hours of operation, this and that, and the parking is separated out on the site plan, but I don't know if that probably wasn't something TY Lin was aware of, or.
Yeah, I don't think that was privy to that.
All those issues are addressed in the special.
So if I may, it wasn't included in the application.
Well, there's two ways to go out. How we covered it is the site plan contains a note that says this project was issued a special use permit on such a date and the resolution number. That's typically how we do it, because that therefore references, incorporates that resolution, which, in other words, so spelling all of that out on the site plan, it's basically say, go see this resolution. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, it is not a heavy lift for us to add a note to the plan that says, per special use permit issued on this date, hours of operation shall be this. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not a heavy lift. It's how we chose to reference it.
Right. So I would say that in my review of the site plan, and anyone in the public, their review of the site plan, the ability to quickly discern the size, scale, the frequency of use, the hours of operation of the restaurant would be challenging. And it is a very important element for the public to understand relative to the public hearing, how they might comment on the project, how they might comment on the site plan. So I'm just going to read a couple things. I hear your point here. I want to read this, and then I'm going to have an ask. So TY Lin's comment, the information previously provided describes the proposed uses. Information specific to hours of operation, peak number of employees, maximum seat capacity are germane to the clubhouse and waterfront uses. It is our understanding that finite details for these uses have not been fully developed at this time. You're expressing that they have. The proposed number of off-street vehicle and bicycle parking spaces is noted on the site plan and Exhibit A, titled Comparison of Approved, so that was slightly different. However, it is very important relative to the hours of operation, maximum seat capacity, that you identify the parking spaces for use for that particular function and how they may differ than the function of residents parking simply for the conveniences of canal side utility and amenities and residents. The applicant's attorney provided testimony to the board at the public meeting on June 7th that PCP intends to reserve the right to develop a 125-seat restaurant on site, consistent with a special use permit received from the Village Board of Trustees. However, the site plan submitted in support of their application no longer showed the detached structure previously labeled as a standalone restaurant. It's now part of that clubhouse. We also note that the current application contains an Exhibit A, which compares the features of the site plan, 2014, to the 2021 site plan, where the proposed use in 2014 included a 120-seat restaurant, but the proposed use in the 2021 plan describes only 150 residential apartments with amenity space. T.Y. Lin goes on to say, we understand that the applicant may be considering using a portion of the clubhouse for a cafe. We're uncertain as to whether or not that is the restaurant itself or a cafe, as a means of providing food and beverage service to the public rather than private use to residents only. But we recommend that the applicant modify their application to include a revised narrative of all proposed uses and structures, including but not limited to hours of operation, peak number of employees, maximum seat capacity, and proposed number of off-street vehicle and bicycle parking spaces. Shall be consistent with Village Code 210.25.2. So our ask of you tonight is to provide us with a detailed written narrative that satisfies the request that T.Y. Lin has expressed here, not simply referencing the special use permit, but specifically providing a written narrative for us to understand in aggregate what you plan right away, what you plan in the future, where any of that may go at any given time. Okay. Any questions on that? No? Okay, great, thanks. So we'll move on. Just a couple things, size and scale of the drawings, that seem fine. Land surveys on file, location of properties. T.Y. Lin made comment that they're in compliance with the requirements. The location and use of existing and proposed structures on the property in question, including all dimensions of height, floor, etc. This speaks to the amended site plans, drawings 02F and 03F are found to comply with the requirements of the section for residential structures only, with the exception of indicating the height of each structure on the site. That information is noted on the companion document prepared by CJS Architects dated January 10th, 2022. Dimensions of height and floor area and exterior entrances have not yet been provided for the non-residential structures. So this is, the term is escaping me right now. No, the elevation and scaling of the clubhouse. I think it's the elevation drawings. Elevation drawings. And the covered parking spots, was the elevation for those included in the
For the detached garages.
For the detached garages, was there an elevation?
No.
No? So I suspect we would need that as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Location of all existing and proposed topography features.
Sure.
Including but not limited to site creating open space. So yes, I would suggest that we need not only an elevation and topography drawing for the clubhouse, but also for the parking.
All structures.
All structures, yep. Yep.
Okay.
So the next one, the location of existing and proposed landscaping, screening walls and fences, including information regarding the size and types of plants and buildings materials proposed. This is a hard one to really understand when just looking at a map. Really hard to visualize what the intent of the goal of the landscaping features are. Andrew, do you have any comment generally on that, or is that something that, I know in your comments you say the amended site plan submitted demonstrate the requirements of this section with respect to landscaping and hardscaping materials. The proposed building materials are still under consideration. But as far as landscaping is concerned, members of the community have expressed, knowing that I'm on the board, concerns that the sizing and scaling of trees or landscapings may not adequately mask the size and scale of the buildings and things along those lines. How do I address those concerns, or how do we talk about them publicly here today?
We can always do renderings. We can always provide cut sheets of all the shrubbery, trees, fencing materials, and what that would look like.
Yeah.
And is there consideration for native species, non-invasive? That would be, it's a very important topic in the village now. So that would be very useful to know that there's due consideration.
I would find it incredibly helpful to have some degree of renderings available to us from the canal side, in particular from Monroe Avenue. I suspect, given the frequency of travel across Monroe Ave, the entrance and exits, there'll be additional traffic on the main arteries. So having that visual understanding of what that may look like, if it's possible. Again, it's hard to visualize a two-dimensional top-down drawing of what that looks like as a resident or as a community member going across the canal.
So you're asking for an additional criteria?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and I think Chris can talk to CJS about that, but my bet is it's going to be a little impractical. Because as you can see on, and this is, my understanding is this is the exact same landscaping plan as was approved in 2014. And I think actually the village board had a lot of input in it too. But this is about as complicated of a landscaping plan as I've ever seen in my life. There are more species and more of them anywhere. So for CJS to create a rendering of that is going to be pretty impractical, especially since when the trees are planted, when the trees are middle growth, when the trees are mature.
So this is, so you will, Christian, you bring up a very good point, right? And Peter and Chris, you do as well, which is the 2014 site plan approval. TY Lin, right? So you have a site plan approval. TY Lin has expressed that the current application as amended is in reasonable conformity and is not substantially adversely different, I think is the terminology.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Terminology, right? It's a legal term that I don't know exactly how it all worked its way through court, but nonetheless, it's not substantially adversely different, right? And so the question is, and this is a good one, to what extent is an additional requirement? So you're like, is this an additional requirement? I don't know the grounds that I have to ask for that. So I'm going to refer to Mindy.
Well, I think that the best way that we can deal with it is to look at what TY Lin did when they compared the materials that they received to the code requirements. And TY Lin, my reading of this was that TY Lin found that PCP had satisfied the requirements with respect to landscaping and hardscaping materials, but not with respect to the proposed building materials.
Like for the fences, I think that.
Right.
Right?
For screening walls and fences, right.
So the types of fencing around a garbage compactor, for example, or screening of units that might be on the ground, where garbage containers may be.
Screening walls within walls, what are they
be,
going to look
right.
like, where are they going to be?
Where they're going to be, things like that. So if I'm not mistaken, this is more, I suppose, for the public, but also just to reiterate the point that was just made. This goes back to the original site plan as submitted and approved. If TY Lin, our engineering work that we've gotten done, suggests that it's in conformity with or not substantially adversely different, that there are no additional requirements that one can require. That seems to be what I'm hearing. So I think it's on us, on our task then, to reflect on how that two-dimensional space, like how we interpret that in a three-dimensional world, in as much as we would love to see it. But I certainly recognize that we don't have, I think, standing to ask for that additional work.
And I think,
and is the information's there. And what I mean by that is in the landscaping plan, is that all of the locations, the types of materials are identified, specific species are identified, so that, Susan, for instance, that it can be easily discerned that these are native species, they're non-invasive species. My point being to this, with all due respect to the people here, and including myself, you have to rely on a professional, which is a landscape architect in this case, which I'm not. My point being is we have a landscape architect, a licensed landscape architect that prepares that plan, that selects the species, the trees. as it relates to what is the intent.
Yep.
For instance, a lot of time was spent within the R5 code, within everything that was done leading up as to what the street tree canopy was a huge component of conversation, buffering along the railroad. So the point is, our landscape architect selecting the proper materials to achieve those goals, the PZBA relying on a professional, i.e. in this case, T.Y. Lin, and their staff of professionals. That's the typical course of action in that their landscape architect can sit there and look at it and say, hey, no, this tree species is not going to achieve what we want. Or, that's rarely where this rests per se, because all that information is there.
Yep.
It's you just, you have to rely on that.
I think the key that I'm trying to get at, though, is if in the prior site plan approval, based on the landscaping work that had been proposed at the time, if you presented invasive species with non-native trees, we can't hold you to a different requirement.
Right.
Because that was, as long as it's not substantially adversely different. And so hypothetically, if you were to take an invasive species and make it non-invasive, then you're improving it, so we can't.
Well, to the extent that the site plan is being modified, I think you could require it to be different and come up to the existing code.
Yeah, if the new code says whatever you do, don't put any invasive species, and we've got invasive species, that's not in substantial conformity with what's required today.
I think
T.Y. Lin took a look at that.
Yep, okay. So in this particular instance, the code updates that may have included native non-invasive species that may not have been in the first code. And so we could have that requirement placed on them differently. But as far as the placement of trees, shrubbery, that is something that, in that this is substantially similar in its prior approval, we don't have the authorization per se to do, right? So the size of the tree is the size of the tree as it was then, is the size of the tree as it will be now.
Yes.
And that's where, to Peter, your point, we're relying on the engineers to tell us so.
Landscape architect.
Okay, yes.
I'll tell you.
Right, okay. So
to be clear, the landscape requirements haven't changed from 2008, 2014 to the 2020 revisions. Identical in wording. We looked at it in the same.
Okay. If you could, please provide the proposed building materials for the landscaping walls, screening, and fences. And a detailed plan of where those items would be in reference to the site plan. That'd be incredibly helpful. Okay, moving on, this is D5E, if anybody's following. The location of existing and proposed public and private streets, off-street parking, loading areas, driveways, sidewalks, ramps, curbs, paths. The amended site plans demonstrate the requirements of this specifically on drawings 02, 03, and details 20 through F through 21. Just referring again to the 14 versus current amended site plan, they're not substantially adversely different, but we will get into in subsequent meetings some of the work that you've done in phase one, looking at where you are today versus where you were in 2014. A waste and trash management plan, including the proposed location, appearance, and operation of dumpsters and other trash receptacles. T.Y. Lin's comment. At this time, the plans submitted to the village do not illustrate a location for dumpsters to be utilized for the clubhouse or related waterfront uses. The applicant provided testimony at the June 1st hearing indicating that totes will be provided for typical resident use, remaining concealed from view until the date pickup by the waste hauler. So if you could, please provide summary detail of locations of these dumpsters to be utilized for the clubhouse and related waterfront uses. In the clubhouse, maybe a cafe or a restaurant, and make sure that the size and scale of the dumpster usage, it's all relative to the size and scaling of what you're using the property for.
Chris, is the anticipation of a dumpster? I thought so.
No, yeah, again, we'll answer that question.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about your ability to answer the question. I just want to make sure we identify that we want it.
Which ones you want the answer.
Many of these things are fairly, clear cut, right? But we do want it as part of the site plan application. We don't want it as part of the special use permit that we're.
Correct.
Sure. Correct. You're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't really want us to redo the application, because the application has been submitted and deemed complete. What I envision is an addendum to the application, or a clarification document answering all these questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Saying a note will be added to the plan.
Yeah, so essentially, you've got an amended site plan application, and you're just going to addendum it and add to it.
With the letter from BME.
Or we'll just keep adding to it, right, to the extent that it's necessary. Okay, so that was the... Yeah, so location, height, intensity, cut sheets, bulb light, light color, all these things. The site lighting plan shows on drawings 14 and 15, including light poles, heights along the proposed fixtures and photometrics. Upon acceptance by the village of the general site plans, these details will be reviewed in greater detail for compliance with mandatory requirements of the Energy Code and exterior lighting requirements of Chapter 117 of Village Code. What this is essentially saying is, we know where your light posts are, we have no idea what type of bulb you're going to put in it, but nor is that our responsibility right now to figure out. So if we like where the general light posts are, right, then in phase 3 of this, when we go to the engineer and ask for additional work, they're going to review all the lighting, the bulbs, the FFF, right?
The only thing, I don't want to put words in Andrew's mouth here, the only difference I would say is actually the light fixtures are specified along with their lumens and everything. I read this to more be that we have all that information. The next step is then to do the technical review to ensure that, yes, these are a dark sky compliant fixture, they are an LED fixture, and that there is no light spill off the property.
We're not looking for any additional information from you at this time. It is embedded in the initial application. Right. It's just that part of the review process is phase 3 versus phase 2. What you've reviewed, if I'm not mistaken, in phase 2 was simply the location of those light posts, those light fixtures, and what they may look like to be reasonably consistent and not substantial.
Right, because he notes includes light pole locations, heights, along with proposed fixtures and photometrics.
Yep.
They acknowledge they have that.
Yep, they do.
Correct. If I may, and then like it's pointed out here, also we'll verify for the Energy Code as well.
Right.
Time clocks and such.
Yep.
Perfect. The location, height, size, material, and design of all existing and proposed signs. So details provided, submitted to the village illustrate signage for accessible parking and no parking. However, the drawings do not identify design or location of wayfinding, nor height, size, and material. Signage schedules and cut sheets will need to be provided for the technical review phase, so that would be phase 3. So if we move forward into phase 3, these will be additional requirements at that time. One question to the applicant: have all, other than these signage items indicated here, have all other signage requests been included in the initial application?
Yeah.
So
we got the brick pillars.
Yeah, we've identified the location of the entry monument, but most importantly, which I think you're right, is we've made sure we've got all the compliant ADA signage and parking signage, fire lane, those items. What we don't have is the wayfinding stuff now.
There's no signage on the building at this time? Let's talk specifically about the use of the cafe and the restaurant. One would expect, or the pool, or things such as private use only, things along those lines. I suspect you'll want signage, and many of that will be visible from the public right of way. Is that included in the application?
No, it's not in the existing application.
Okay. So if you could, think about.
But I kind of see that as wayfinding. Well, maybe the sign for the restaurants, it's a sign, you need a sign permit, so.
We'd come back for a sign approval. I mean, we couldn't possibly tell you what.
Yeah, until we know what the restaurant is.
Sure, but at least the reference of a sign.
There
will be a sign of the restaurant. It'll be wall versus roof. It'll be neon versus not, right? It'll agree with the code as currently drafted.
Right. No, I think it's important for the public, to know what is available to them.
Canal side,
Right.
interior,
Yeah.
along the narrow.
Good idea, Dave.
Right?
Maybe both.
Maybe both, maybe just one. No. Anyway, so there's lots of different things here, but the other thing is, as you think about the clubhouse, as you think about the pool, and you think about pedestrians walking around and going to the public amenities, to what degree are they going to have to see a whole bunch of signs on right now, could be a chain link fence. I don't think we have the understanding of what the building materials of the, around the screening is for the pool, right? So what does that look like? All these things are important for us to understand. And because the clubhouse is uniquely different than the prior application when the restaurant was a standalone unit, that clubhouse in particular is new to the application relative to what it was before. So we want to be very careful that we evaluate it appropriately.
So are you saying you're looking for the wayfinding signage now and the signage schedules and cut sheets in phase 3?
So what I would suggest, the signage schedules and cut sheets can be provided in the technical phase, but I think the additional signage, it would be incredibly helpful in advance, and perhaps for you as well, to do in phase 2 rather than phase 3, specific to the restaurant signage, right? How is that different than, you talk about the monument sign. Is the monument sign, do we have an image?
I think there is a detail.
There is a detail.
Okay. But it would be helpful for us to understand how we're looking at the restaurant and the cafe. And again, maybe all that can loop in with the description thereof. There's no other current signage to be on the different buildings. Are you going to have a big A and B and C with numbers all around? I need to, we need to know that.
No, those are just what's required by emergency services and building code in the post office.
If you could
just address numbers.
So is that, a lot of things are just required by.
Those do not count. I can guarantee whatever your sign code says, those don't count as signs under the sign code.
Right, but the size thereof, the location thereof, these things have to be in conformity with some code, right? So just like with the fire code where you have to outline all your different plans accordingly, shouldn't we with signage have some expectation of where they will be so that an inspector can understand if they're uniquely different than what has been approved in the site plan?
I think we understand the issue clearly.
Yeah.
And we'll try and answer the question and make some decisions and provide it to you the best we can, and the rest, is technical review.
Yep, okay, yep. So the location of existing proposed utility systems, including sewage and septic, water supply, et cetera. Additional information will be provided during the technical review. This material has been provided. Let's see. One exception, though, the illustrating of telephone, it provided cable of fiber and electric. So it does look like some additional material needs to be included.
We will clarify that with TY Lin, but the issue with that is those are private utilities, private utility company providers. They do not prepare their layouts until you submit them approved, signed site plans. That's RG&E, Time Warner, Spectrum. That is their policy.
Okay.
So
Peter can tell you where he guesses they'll approve it, but.
So yeah, they just won't do their layouts.
So that'll be additional comment that would be provided in phase 3. That may be the concluding comments from our engineers at that time. Okay. We get into configuration of stormwater drainage. Comments, once the site plans have been accepted by the village, engineering reports, including stormwater calculations, will need to be provided for review, demonstrating stormwater. I just want to clarify that. It's not once the site plans have been accepted by the village. That's just simply saying once we sort of move forward from this phase 2 into the engineering phase, that additional information would need to be provided.
So that would be after, so you would approve the site plan conditioned on the technical review.
Right, I mean, this is all phase 3 technical review stuff.
Right. Yes. Right. Evaluations at a scale of 1/4. So this is an evaluation or a scaling thing. So just to read this comment, due to the nature and scale of the project, the latest building elevations and renderings submitted by CGS Architects were prepared using a 1/16, which equals 1 foot and 1 foot equals 20 feet respectively. It is typical that it's 1/4 inch. So just a note that is 1/4 smaller, right? But all the details there, if I'm not mistaken, it's just a lot smaller in scale. The scale is consistent with the scale of similar projects presented throughout Western New York and are consistent with industry standards. These same color renderings were presented to the board at the planning and zoning hearing on June 1st of this year, where the board finds the drawings lack sufficient clarity for visual observation. Additional drawings prepared at larger scale should be requested. I've not had the opportunity to go through and determine if I need something of a larger scale. Does anybody else? At this point, I can't think that I will, because the PDFs are, we can blow them up reasonably well. They're very high resolution. 20 years ago, that may not have been the case, but the resolution.
Distort a little.
It does a little once you get too big.
5 years ago.
Right.
It really wasn't.
Yep.
You couldn't download the PDF.
It's amazing. In 30 seconds time, I can download a 180-page application. Plans to prevent the pollution of surface or groundwater, erosion of soil. So there's some comments that TY Link, bless you, makes here. Just jump to the conclusion. Due to the proximity to the Erie Canal, we recommend that the initial installation of temporary erosion control features be witnessed by continuous observation. So this is simply saying that they want very regular observation of a qualified person prior to the start of construction. As we move forward in the project, we'll certainly need to engage in additional on-site engineering review and observation.
And that's all documented on the site plans now. It's a condition of the New York State DEC general permit for stormwater discharges.
Okay. So it's there.
It's there, is the point, that we acknowledge that it has to be done.
Right.
And we have the responsibility.
And I think here they're just referencing additional continuous observations. D8, plans for disposal of construction and demo waste. So this, again, being a larger project, prior to construction, a plan will need to be submitted to the village for approval, showing all these locations, et cetera, et cetera. I would think that's probably moving forward into phase 3, because nothing there is permanent due to the construction and demolition. Soil log test, well percolation test, stormwater runoff calculations. This is interesting. I'll just read it because I didn't know it. Total of 44 test pits were excavated and recorded by Labella Associates from June 2008 to August of 2008. Copy as provided to the village in Appendix D, submitted by BME Associates. Stormwater calculations were provided in the engineer's report, will be reviewed during the technical phase. So that's a lot of test pits. So yeah, appreciate again your good work there. Natural resource inventories and/or tree surveys. A review of natural resources was included in the full environmental assessment form submitted by the applicant under seeker. Again, just to go back, the seeker was completed by the village board. There will be no seeker for this project as a result of the determination of, I believe it was the Judge Ark.
Yeah.
So the next one is, I think, very important for residents to think on. A detailed traffic study upon request, and it's also just important for them to know. So as part of the site plan review, a detailed traffic study upon request of the planning board to include the projected number of motor vehicle trips to enter and leave the site, estimated for daily and peak hours traffic levels. The projected traffic flow pattern, including vehicular movements at all major intersections likely to be affected by the proposed use of the site. The impact of the traffic upon existing abutting public and private ways in relation to existing road capabilities, existing and proposed daily and peak hour traffic levels, and road capacity levels shall also be given. So this is the section of the site plan that has to do with traffic that a lot of people for a project of this size will want to know about. This goes back a little bit to our comments on trees and landscaping of the 2014 site plan versus today's amended site plan. To the extent that in T.Y. Lim's report in phase 1 is illustrating smaller capacity structures, smaller restaurant, whatever it may be, right? Those are matters that are going to affect parking. To that end, I believe there's a traffic study that was done specific to seeker, and as a result, it was embedded in their neg deck. though challenged in court, was upheld. So to that end, this has more to do with the interior arteries of the project rather than the exterior arteries of the project. I don't know if the state has made any determination, I don't think they have to at this time, as to what they would do with the intersection there at Monroe and the entrance, if anything, right? So, but that is not what we're looking at here. So I'm going to read T. Wyland's comment. A traffic impact study was prepared by Stantec Consulting on March 10, 2010, and updated on July 10, 2010. This study was reviewed by the New York State Department of Transportation per their letter to the Board of Trustees on August 30th, 2010, and by SRF Associates on behalf of the Board of Trustees. The impact of vehicular traffic was ultimately accepted by the village, incorporated into the seeker neg deck, and further supported by the special use permit granted by the village board. The reduction in building sizes and number of units, as well as the elimination of standalone restaurant, may further reduce traffic impact in the vicinity of the project site. The traffic impact study will be reviewed during the technical review phase, at which time we'll determine whether the impact on traffic is consistent with the current application. Any additional comment, Andrew, with regards to traffic? No. Okay. I do think, to the extent that the restaurant or the cafe or pool guest rules, I don't know what they may be, right? In many respects, residential pool use may include guests, right? And to what degree has that been included in the residential parking, right? So all these things, when you think about on-site parking, vehicular traffic, public amenities, the restaurant, the use, is it a cafe, is it a restaurant, 125 seat, 150 seat, whatever it may be, all of that needs to be understood with regards to a traffic comment. So if you could, and ask, would be to provide us greater clarity, whether or not it simply takes what you had in 2014, pulls it all forward, right? And we put it in as a special standalone statement of fact or statement of intent. We want to have it be embedded in this amended site plan rather than a reference to the prior. So again, it might be cut and paste to the extent you might have some modifications that are required as a result of the different uses. And in that, this is specific to traffic flow. It isn't specific to parking, right? So what is your expectations of use, right? Or peak hours, daily, that sort of thing.
So you're looking for more detail on the program?
I'm looking to understand.
Or how it relates to traffic?
I think I understand. Let me take a swing at the answer here.
Yeah.
Well, not the answer.
Sure.
I think what we need to provide is, it's simple enough for us to provide to you a comparison of what the trip generation is projected based on the project today versus the 2014 approved plan. That's what I'm hearing. What these are the uses we're proposing now, the scale uses, these are the projected trip generations. We'll be able to generate those numbers. You'll be able to compare them to what was analyzed from 2010 through 2014. As T.Y. Lin here suggests, likelihood is those trip generations are going to be very close, if not less, because of the reduction in the residential units. T.Y. Lin's comment suggests that. What I'm hearing from you is show us that.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's right.
So there's that component. The other component, or there's two more components that we would provide. The second component of this, something that we haven't talked a lot about, and that, but that really is going to be the crux of our task 3 work, is the site plan was approved in November of 2014. But for that next year, a lot of work was done addressing all of the various comments.
The technical phase.
The technical phase. And we have all that documentation. So a lot of these comments we're reading, we have a lot of that information. And it is the function of just being sure, has there been any code updates? If not, we can resubmit it. So but a key component of that was of the steps we had taken. The New York State DOT had identified what mitigation was necessary at the intersection with Monroe Avenue, at the Monroe Avenue approach into the village. That had gotten even as far as the village trustees passing the necessary resolutions with state DOT on maintenance of facilities. But we'll have all of that, and we'll provide that. So there's that second component that goes to your question, where do we stand with DOT? That's how far we move with that. The third thing that I think would be important to everybody, including the public, part A, I said, is about where the trip generation is. But what's happened along Monroe Avenue since 2014, 2015? Off the top of my head, what I can tell you, because we looked this up, New York State DOT has automated traffic counts on Monroe Avenue every year, the tubes. Basically, the average daily traffic on Monroe Avenue since 2016 has slightly decreased. The number, in other words, there has not been any change in the existing background traffic on Monroe Avenue, such that the background traffic that was utilized as part of the traffic impact study is the same numbers as today. So there's nothing that's happened along Monroe Avenue that would suggest the impacts that have been studied have reversed. And all of that will be provided to TY Lin for their task 3 review.
So the question that I would have, I guess, before us, and maybe Mindy, you have to comment on, what we've just asked, which is to pull all that traffic patterns and parking stuff forward into this application. Is this something that would only be requested for, should we proceed forward in phase 3, or is it something that we would request in phase 2? And Andrew, do you have any comment as to whether or not it's embedded in your review process for phase 2, or would it be phase 3?
So we could definitely do that in phase 3.
Okay.
It's anticipated to be part of the phase 3 technical.
Okay. So then, said another way to the public, whoever may listen, we don't know until phase 3.
Right.
We're not
Like a lawyer and your engineer.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that should be phase 3.
Yep. So that's good, in that it relieves you of a certain task to a later time when we've gotten through additional steps.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because, I mean, this is a lay board. It's not the kind of stuff that this board does.
Yep. Perfect. All right. A schedule for completion of construction phases. A construction schedule outline and anticipated ground break dates in all phases of construction will be submitted prior to mobilization on site as a condition of permitting. All right, so that's just later. County, state permits, et cetera. Permits required by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New York State DEC have been issued. Additional permits will be required from the New York State Department of Transportation for work in the state right-of-way, to your point, Peter. We anticipate that those permits will be applied for after approval from the village. If you could, and I don't know off the top of my head, have all those approvals that you referenced or that TY Lin has referenced here, are they embedded in the application, or they are just simply on?
They happened afterwards, so they weren't in the application. I haven't seen copies of them.
And we should get copies, and should they just be emailed to us? Is that how that works?
Yeah, the Army Corps and the DEC already have.
And I mean this with all due respect, and those were provided in 2015.
Yep.
But it's very easy to resubmit them. We have them all.
Yeah, and not even submit them as much as send them in. Again, this is all a little bit about, it's so far removed from 2014.
Right.
I think the public is due some degree of understanding that the appropriate legwork is either pulling from the past or being done in the present. And one of the ways to do that is to have those documents be attached to this application and amended to this application.
That's the same thing we're doing at our office. We're pulling all the 2014, 2015 info and putting it into 2022 files.
So I think just for the public, we do the same thing, right?
And interestingly, and I think usefully, as previous boards have received this information, mostly in 2015, but some came in 2016, 2017. Brian Powers came in every December saying, could you please grant us an extension of our, condition number 20 of the planning board, the 1-year building permit. Here's the progress we've made. So every year there's a letter saying, these are the permits we got this year. These are the permits we still haven't got. Here's why we haven't gotten them.
Do any of those permits ever expire? Or is it that substantially adversely different clause again?
Some do.
Yeah, there's time stamps on some of them, but you just request extensions.
Request extensions, okay. And those
or
are
in some
generally,
instances with some of the DEC permits, the work was done.
Okay. Okay.
But that'll all be updated.
And that, at a minimum, would probably be a final phase 3 review type work. Okay. All New York State secret documentation, that's been done. The application fee entered into escrow and provided preliminary escrow. Such other further additional information or materials as deemed necessary by the review board. So I'd say at this time, there's a couple things I want to keep going on, but anything related to the prior conversation that we...
I don't think people have really had a chance to take a deep
I don't
dive
either.
into this, so
Yep.
why don't we put a pin in that one?
Sounds good. Okay, site plan review considerations, conformance with the comprehensive plan and the LWRP. At this time, there is the 2014 site plan. On June 7th, 2022, the PZBA determined that the application was inconsistent with the LWRP. That is an appeal, as we've talked about before. Conformance with district, building use, and lot requirements. The planning board's final site plan approvals findings on page 13 demonstrate compliance. There's talk about vehicular traffic again, which is phase 3, adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian and bicyclists. In this case, the planning board's findings from the prior approval demonstrate compliance, compatibility of proposed uses to adjacent uses, considering building orientation to site design and transitional treatments. The planning board's 2014 final site plan approval findings on page 14 found compliance with these provisions. Again, this goes back to substantially adversely different. And in subsequent meetings from now, we'll review how the 2014 site plan compares to the current site plan, and to any degree anything is not, that is considered more detrimental or less detrimental or different. We want to review the impact on the community, and that's work that we'll do at a later time. Adequacy of off-street parking, loading, access management provisions. This goes back to 2014. Though there's going to be additional comment and review of the cafe/restaurant, public amenities, and traffic requirements of residents. Adequacy of landscaping and screening, we talked about that. Location, arrangement, size, design of proposed on-site signage and other incidental buildings. So this here, TY Lin offers comment. See comments above under D5H pertaining to signage. With respect to other incidental building or site amenities, it is unclear what the authors of this provision intended to be produced, and therefore what we are expected to verify. Given the nature of the project and large number of buildings and site amenities, they might be considered as incidental to the project, waterfront features and activities, the clubhouse, the swimming pool, detached garage. It is our opinion that the site submitted has satisfied these requirements. So that is the opinion of the engineer. I do just want to reference our prior conversation on signage and our expectations there too. So they're up.
Understood.
Okay. Adequacy of proposed outdoor lighting. There's comments on that previously. Adequacy of existing proposed stormwater. This is going to be in phase 3. The drawings submitted do show a stormwater drainage system. Calculations have not been done. Have not been provided to TY Lin yet. Stormwater sewer inverts, slope and depths were not provided. Upon acceptance, general, moving to phase 3, this detail will be reviewed in greater detail. So it's just something that you may have to do or will have to do, but not for this phase. Adequacy of existing or proposed water and sanitary. Same thing as prior, which is additional work is needed to be done, but it isn't until we move to the next phase. Adequacy of proposed waste and trash management plan. So here I'll read their comment. The site plans do not currently show the number or the location dumpster of a dumpster to serve the clubhouse, that is the cafe, the restaurant, the pool, etc. The site plans will need to be revised to indicate the proposed location and to provide architectural details for a dumpster enclosure to be consistent with the proposed architecture of the building. So that is an ask in phase 2. Snow removal detail. This isn't mentioned as part of phase 3 or the engineering element. The adequacy of proposed snow storage will be reviewed in detail. Is that typically, Andrew, phase 3 or phase 2, snow removal?
Kind of both.
Okay.
Depends on the site, the amount of impervious surfaces, the parking, because that might need to be adjusted depending on square footage of space.
So this is,
So I would say it's probably attached to.
so this is your lot coverage is fairly high. What was the lot coverage, if I remember, Peter?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Up the
Do
top
you remember
of my head.
roughly?
Wait,
Not very much.
no, I know we far exceed.
Oh, he doesn't need to find.
You don't need to find it. I just,
It's okay.
it's okay.
Find that.
At the end of the day, the green space we provide far exceeds the
Yes,
minimum
okay.
requirement. And
Perfect.
most importantly, the street section we've used is the R5 street section,
Yes.
which includes the tree lawn area, which is the intended snow storage area. Really, what we need to do is take the green space areas Andrew referenced and label them also as snow storage areas. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're adequately doing is referencing the approval of the 2014 site plan. And what we'd like to do is understand snow removal and on-site snow removal as part of, and labeling as part of the phase 2.
Mhm.
So that way we can put it back to TY Lin and ask, is it sufficient, right? Because what we don't want is a whole bunch of snow on a whole bunch of parking.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, your parking requirements aren't met during 4 months out of the year or whatever it may be.
Correct.
Snow removal, snow storage all along the north edge of the property.
So Christian, yeah. Get some permission to just put it in the canal.
Do it to building fair.
There you go.
Right?
Oh, the canal?
Oh,
Yeah.
they put snow in the canal
They
in
do, yes.
Rochester.
They do
dump
it.
over the bridges all the
They
time.
do it
Right into the
here.
river, right.
They do.
You could have a slide in the summer and
Yeah.
a snow removal device in the,
Hudson.
yeah. Anyway,
It's got to go somewhere.
it would be
What
nice,
goes for the city?
actually, I think as part of phase 2, if you could give us some understanding with clarity as to the snow removal.
Absolutely.
Whether or not the proposal will adversely affect the health, safety, or general welfare of adjacent property owners and the community. The applicant has indicated that the project is not anticipated to adversely affect the health, general welfare. The board will need to determine whether or not they concur. Again, this has a little bit to do with the prior site plan, the current site plan, the differences, and whether or not it is more adversely affecting the community or less so than what was previously approved in 2014.
Yeah, and I don't know why TY Lin changed or didn't include this, but the 2014 planning board did specifically address in their findings that test of health, safety, and general welfare. It will not cause any damage to those things.
In that they received approval, I would assume that to be true.
Yeah.
So I think all we're doing here is making sure that it is consistent with what we've determined in the past. I don't see this in particular as being something, assuming that all the references from what was versus what is now are more accommodative rather than less so, that this isn't necessarily anything.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Are you prepared to talk about fire code?
Sure.
Does anybody have any comments prior to fire code? Because I think this is perhaps, at least as far as your report is concerned, you've provided almost 2.5 pages of comment on fire code. I have very little understanding of fire code. The public probably has very little understanding of fire code. And if you could, to the extent that you can, provide the appropriate ask for the phase 2 part of the project.
Sure.
And Mr. Burton assures me that you are a very good fire code expert.
No pressure now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to generate more storyboards for you, so you can all look at it visually. But I'm sure that if you all have a copy of the packet, and you'd like to decide it, it's also been posted online. Okay. So what we've discovered is due to the dwelling structures, they exceed 30 feet in height above grade plane. This would require aerial apparatus access. Well, I'm sorry, let's start with number 1. Because they do exceed 30 feet, they will need aerial apparatus access, which would require the 26-foot wide fire lane. And this lane needs to be no less than 15 feet and no greater than 30 feet away from one whole side of the building. In our measurements of some of the buildings, they do not meet this requirement. Some are very small, some are greater than 30 feet. And that would be, up to the design professional on how they want to either move lanes, try to apply for variance, or just building locations.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the packet that was added to the agenda under, and just a quick comment for the public, the agenda and all the attachments are embedded in the planning and zoning meetings and agendas section of the website, not on the first page calendar link. So if you're looking for everything we're talking about tonight, I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but it's embedded in the planning and zoning meetings and agendas. But in there, I believe, Kristen, we've added this phase 2 comment from T.Y. Lin.
Yes.
And towards the end of that document, there is a very nice drawing provided that identifies in red and to a degree blue and green some of the comments that Andrew's referencing here with regards to the fire code.
Yeah, try to make it coincide nicely so it's visually easy to read.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, to be more specific, it was buildings 2, 5, and 7. What do I have next? Okay.
Well, I'm only smiling here because we can address it. But the reason that occurred is because we shrunk the buildings. And so that pulled the buildings off the fire lane further. So we just got to take the buildings and pull them back towards the fire lane. So in other words, what we're going to do is increase the green space between the buildings and the street on the canal side. You got to take those buildings and pull them back so they get within that 30 feet. So that's what occurred. Because the 2014 plan, we were within that 30 feet. But when we shrunk the buildings, we just didn't orient the building correctly in relation to the fire lane.
Does it need to be both sides or just one side?
Just one side.
Just one side. So when I look at the report and I look at buildings 2 and buildings 5, I have red indicated on either side. And you're saying if you correct one of those, you correct both of those.
They have the option, that's why.
That's right, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I might just briefly comment, a couple of folks were just referencing or looking at watches. I'd like to have a hard stop tonight at 9:30, if that's okay. I think the fire code's the last part that we'll talk about this evening. We have some tasks at hand. So Andrew, if we could, maybe another 5-10 minutes on fire code, and then I'll just offer some closing remarks and we're good to go.
Are we opening a public hearing? Because I do have a bunch of comments and questions.
I would like to hear them tonight because people did bother to come on.
Yeah.
So with the fires?
So hang on just a second. Well, the fire code might go on a little bit longer. I know, Susan, you have a hard stop at 9:30. Do the rest of the board members have a hard stop at 9:30 such that we want to postpone the public feedback? Or do we want to hear it and just delay into maybe 9:45 to get some of the public comment heard today?
If I may suggest, I mean, this is all in writing.
Yeah.
And I think that, the applicant and his engineers can parse that out. Maybe we should just turn to the public comments. And then if the board has any questions for Lynn, maybe we can invite you back for another time.
That's fine.
Some of the
I agree with that.
And I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think the public would benefit from doing this.
That sounds great.
This is more technical information that I don't think is
All right, great.
on the same side.
So for the public, we are addressing fire code concerns that T.Y. Lin has expressed in their report, and the project's engineers will get back and respond accordingly, and we'll continue on from there. You guys are also just aware of the other tasks with regards to what we've covered tonight. And I think now's a good time to hear from the public.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great, thanks.
Make a motion.
Make a motion to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Great.
Motion carries.
And if I could, just given the number of people who may like to comment. If you could keep your comments to somewhere around 2-3 minutes, that would be very helpful. Know that we're going to have another meeting on this topic at another time as well, so if you have additional comment then. And with that, Kristen, if you could open it up and just state your name and address.
This is just on the Q&A.
Okay.
It's Art Pierce. You would like the board to provide clarification on the agreement that was just read and approved, which would be the resolution that you did in the beginning of the.
The tolling?
The tolling agreement?
Yes.
That'll be posted to the website.
Okay.
That'll be posted to the website if you didn't hear that.
In regards to RED 5D, he suggested a 3D model in addition to perspectives and elevations would be very helpful in presenting a true picture of the proposed landscaping. 3D modeling software is extensively used. It's a common practice by design professionals to present a more clearer picture of proposed designs. A 3D model would also provide a clearer perspective of the project buildings from multiple perspectives once the model is created. Regarding D5H.
If I could just comment on the.
There's really no, we're receiving comments now,
Oh, great.
so there's really no need to respond to them.
Okay, fair enough.
Suggested an overall signage plan be requested if not already. D6, once again, 3D perspectives will go a long way to present a clearer picture of what is being proposed, both for the village board and the public. D11, Stantec's report was completed in 2010, 12 years ago. Suggested an updated traffic impact statement be undertaken for the village's review with consideration of the probability that traffic volumes have changed / increase since the 2010 study, in addition to the changes in usage as suggested by the chair. And he stated that Mr. Vars may have now answered the question. If so, Two Islands follow-up report should then include the New York State DOT date regarding current daily counts along Monroe in the immediate area of the currently proposed project. And those are all the comments and questions online.
That was all one guy, one person?
That was all one person, yes.
Okay.
Anybody with their hands raised?
No hands raised?
Thanks for coming in.
Hey, thank you. So, I mean.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Dave McGee, 28 Washington Ave. You guys know how I feel about this based on my comments a month ago. But I wanted to add a couple of comments just based on what just came in there, and Dave, some of the comments you made, and it kind of tells me, or illustrates, I think, why some of the reasons this process has taken so long. While being detail-oriented can be a good thing, I believe the level that you're taking it is paralyzing. And I'll give you an example. Requesting a 3D model or seeing a site survey for a landscape to a degree to see what the entrance will look like exactly, to me is out of scope. I believe you guys take a lot of things out of the scope of the board that you serve. And I believe, just based on watching this and some of the comments that were made in the last meeting, Susan making a lot of comparisons to Schoen Place. And I use Schoen because I use the original German pronunciation of a family that was named after, not Shane. So a lot of comparisons to Schoen. And then from a scale standpoint, Dave, a comparison that you used to the size using the four corners distance from Four Corners to Pittsford Florist is what you used last time. So that tells me that there's a lot of personal opinion that bleeds into these hearings, which, hey, I get you're human. But I do remind you that your job on this board is to keep it within the scope of the responsibilities of the board and not get too caught up in your personal preferences. For example, Schoen Place as like it has to look exactly like Schoen Place. That was built over the course of 50 years, a hodgepodge mixture, not some master plan development. It was a mixture of barns and flour mills and houses that evolved over a period of time that became a identity. But to take that as if you then need to pick that up and plant it over here and make this one look as close to it as you can, again, tells me too much personal interpretation coming into the board. And so I request that you guys really, you know what? Look in the mirror and say, am I looking at this objectively enough? And am I getting outside the scope of the project by nitpicking so much, as opposed to looking at these guys as professionals that, for example, the trees and plants that they are going to plant into this, and the entrance, and the signs that are going to go on, they want people to pay money to move here. So there has to be some level of trust at this point. We've only been at it 15 years, I know, but some level of trust that they know what the hell they're doing, and they're going to deliver a good product because they want people to actually move in. So there may be things that you wish to have, but if they're not within the scope of what you're judging this on, skip that statement and tighten these meetings up a bit. And then one last request I'll make. Dave, you talk about the public and what they'd like to know. Listen, I'd love to know exactly what you guys are talking about, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And I'm a guy that actually shows up. What do you got, one guy listening in? What that tells you is, yeah, the public can't always make the time to come here, but they're interested. You know when the last meeting notes were published for this board on the current website? A year ago. You can only find 2021, May, and that goes for all the other boards. The website being under construction, by the way, is not an excuse. So we need to either post on the website updates as far as, well, where are you guys in your decision? You turned it down a month ago, so what do you need to see to approve it? Keep the public in the loop, put an email out, put a newsletter out, or just post it right on the website. I think millions of dollars in litigation expense warrants its own headline link right on the main village website that you click on that says 75 Monroe. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any other public comments at this time?
No.
Nope. Okay. So with that, just ask the applicant.
Want to close the public hearing? Or
Would we reopen? I'd rather leave it open.
Okay.
So I'd like to just make a motion to leave the public hearing and comment period open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. So with that, gentlemen, you have kind of marching orders for what we need for the continuation of phase 2. What I'd like to do, and if it's okay with the members of the board, once we receive the information from you, we'll schedule a meeting as soon as reasonably possible thereafter when the members of the board and our attorney are available to be present. Do you have any concern or problem with that approach?
I think if we schedule it with a deadline by which we have to get you stuff before the meeting, that would work even better because Peter works best under the gun.
So I appreciate that. I'll ask that you put your own deadline on Peter.
All right, well, let's just schedule the meeting.
Specifically as a result of making sure we have ample time for review, because the next phase of the discussion will be.
Well, and Thailand also needs ample time.
That's right.
Right, yeah, I'd like to comment if I can.
Right.
Yeah.
So if, since we didn't get to the fire code aspect, which is more technical, to continue this project, the process a little faster for task 2, can we move this issue to task 3 for the fire code, so we don't have to come back the next time?
I don't think we can, because we need to know where the roads are going to be for the site plan review.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to know the location of the buildings and the roads.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
But it's possible that Peter and Jim, between now and the next meeting. And make it so that Jim can say, don't worry, the fire stuff is all.
Right, but I think it has to go on public record, right?
So what I would.
Hearing to discuss that.
What I'd suggest is you guys all get together, make sure that your findings with regards to the fire code is on the up and up, right? And I think that would be when we then schedule the next discussion, right? At special meeting, as soon as we can, reasonably thereafter. But it will need to be noticed and included in additional agenda items. And that'll be 10 days. I forget the exact number of days. It has to be noticed, 10 days.
10 days.
So once we receive it, it's possible, depending on how much we review, how quickly it comes in, frankly, how much of all this we get reviewed prior to that versus when it comes in, how detailed it is and how much time we need. But my hope would be that it's within 10 to 14 days after receipt.
Can I suggest that, I think it'll take us about 2 weeks to respond back to with a revision of everything we've talked about. And then,
I'm out to make it the 25th.
the whole week.
Not anymore, you're not.
But again, 10 days after that is the end of the month, so can we pencil in a meeting for the first week in August?
We can put that in the calendar 10 days prior to. So I'm just going to defer.
Yeah, but I
So
appreciate.
this is a trust thing. We want to get it done as fast as you do.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I understand.
And the issue, my biggest issue, and this is our 174th meeting, is scheduling the meetings, because I call Kristen, she tries to rally people up, there's no one here, it's very difficult. If we could put something on the calendar, we either make it or miss it, it's a lot easier.
Our regular meeting is the first.
It's August 3rd.
All right, so let's go with our next regular meeting.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joanne.
I love it. I love it.
That's what problem
See,
solving.
She doesn't speak much, for which she does.
That's right.
It's really
Very
worthwhile.
good.
Can I ask a question? And this is, I think, a little bit for T.Y. Lynn's
Sure.
benefit also. Do we have the ability, BME, to reach out to T.Y. Lynn and discuss with them any of these comments? Where I'm coming at is with this fire code issue, I would love to be able to have a conversation with T.Y. Lynn and go, making sure, this is how I'm reading this, I want to be sure I'm interpreting it correctly so we respond appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't any legal problem with that.
I have no problem.
Okay.
Anybody on the board have a challenge
I
to
just
that?
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, just you guys report back to the board as to what you talked about and what you decided.
Yep.
Perfect, I just wanted to be sure of
Yeah,
that. Thank you.
And to the extent that some of this additional information will require phase 2 review by T.Y. Lynn, is it reasonable for them when they reach conclusions on some of these matters, like the cafe, the signage, the number of occupancies, the use, that sort of thing, for them to, once they've completed their work on their end, to send it to us, CCU, and send it direct to T.Y. Lynn at that time?
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm not sure, because there may not be another written thing.
Okay.
It may just be, we asked for this, we got it, let's move on.
Perfect. So at this time, we'll just keep it to the fire code and wait to see receipt, and if we need additional review, then we can request it at that time. Okay, great.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, hang on just a second, we're going to back that up. Christian.
No, I was making the motion.
Oh, you're making the motion. All right, Christian wants out of here. I will try that again. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you in the
Appreciate it.